If you ever played a Plague Tale series, hopefully in chronological order, Innocence first, then Requiem, you'd immediately know Amicia and Hugo, the two children forced to face the world, where unbeknown to them, a war between the English and the French was raging, and the plague was slowly brewing. In A Plague Tale Innocence, these children lived normal lives with their parents and had normal concerns about their daily life. Amicia was a 15-year-old girl who wanted to be seen as mature by her father. Hugo was a sick boy who just wanted to be around his mother, and the concerns of the war and the plague was something the parents only needed to worry about. Children were innocent, oblivious to the troubles of the world. But that pure, carefree innocence would be broken when the outside world brought the war and the plague to the door of the Darun family, tearing apart the family and forcing these poor children with a choice: keep going or die. The Inquisition kicked down the door and attacked the family and their servants, looking for Hugo. The kids had to escape death time after time, barely escaping one threat just to run into another. Robert de Rune, the father, lost his life to the Inquisition, and the mother, Beatrice, was captured, taken as a prisoner, and was tortured for months because they wanted the whereabouts of her son. Hugo was only 5 years old when his world changed forever. The only person in his life was his mother. He depended on her to help him with his sickness and ease his pain. Hugo rarely saw his father and Amicia. They were strangers to him. When the Inquisition came, Amicia and Hugo were left to fend for themselves. Hugo was too young to understand why he couldn't go back home to his mom and what death meant. He was just a child who couldn't comprehend the situation they were in. And sometimes he threw a childish tantrum that would get him into more trouble. At first, not gonna lie, Hugo was a brat who would get mad at his sister and run straight into danger because he wanted his mom. It wasn't until he saw some man die that he realized he should listen to his sister when she tells him what to do. Hugo of the series would see more and more death, eventually learning that he was the reason why so many people died. He was born with the prima macula, an evil that purely desires to plague the world with death and even devour the sun. This evil can even alter reality itself. At some point, Hugo would even unalive people himself when the Inquisition brainwashed him into letting the prima macula take control. Death would become the norm for this young boy, but it never got any easier. Amicia was forced to grow up and cross lines she never dreamed of crossing in order to protect Hugo. She killed a madman who was going to hurt Hugo, and then immediately had to kill a crazy knight who only wanted to be reunited with his children, who were taken by the plague. She felt sick to her stomach. She did what she had to, but she never wanted to go this far as taking lives just to survive. Though she saw just as much death as Hugo, she was the cause of most of them, and unlike Hugo, death would become much easier to handle. Eventually, Amicia would become numb to unaliving people, to the point that her solution to any problem or to a threat in the rest of the series would be slinging a rock in their face. By the second game, Amicia would even lose control and become bloodlusted and couldn't stop killing people until someone else snapped her out of it. These poor children were scared of strangers, but interactions with other people was something they wanted. They had Lucas, and Lucas was the definition of a Chad, or whatever youngsters say nowadays. That boy was a genius, a voice of reason, and a soundboard for either child to speak to when they couldn't speak to each other. And Lucas wouldn't go anywhere. But besides Lucas, Hugo and Amicia wanted to have more interactions with more people, to somewhat restore their lives to what they could call normal. But most interactions led with suspicion and distrust of anyone new. They feared that this new person could be dangerous, or worse, if this person was not dangerous but friendly. They were more scared of losing anyone else and being hurt by more loss. In the first game, we meet Arthur, Melly, and Robert, other young children left to fend for themselves in this horror. This group quickly grew close due to the circumstances, quickly forging bonds due to escaping death together. Plus, they were all still children. In another world, I would like to imagine these kids would have been good friends, but fate had different plans for these three. Arthur and Robert would be killed protecting Hugo and Amicia, and Melly would abandon them, disgusted and terrified after learning the truth of Hugo's sickness, leaving the siblings alone again. Except for Lucas. He's just the GOAT. This kid was a gift from God to Hugo and Amicia. But I imagine having all your other friends die or abandon you due to being around you can hurt these kids to never want to build a relationship with anyone else just to protect themselves from more pain. Hugo and Amicia would even learn that they couldn't trust their own gut feeling anymore. By the second game, Hugo and Amicia run off and escape to find this alien that Hugo had dreams that would cure him. Little did they know it was a trap set by the Prima Macula long before even Hugo's birth. All as a scheme just to fool him into unleashing the full power of the macula when he had thought he had lost Amicia forever, and thus unleashing the full power of the macula, crossing a point where he can no longer come back from. Amicia would then have to unalive her own little brother, who she had been protecting for all this time, just to save the world, even though her world was her little brother. These children had normal lives, but fate had a different plan for this family. Their innocence had been stolen, the world turned upside down, and death became their daily lives. No matter how much they avoided it, how much they tried to stop it, these children would always be at the heart of this plague. These children were hurt, traumatized by death, and death they brought to the world for simply existing. Fate chose to punish these kids, to mold them and shape them against their will, sending them on a path they did not choose, leaving death in their wake, even hurting those close to them. Their innocence was destroyed, and their kindness scarred. These wounds would carry over for the rest of their lives.